afternoon, everybody. It's your boy Aaron B, and it is Taco Thursday. It is Cowboys versus Giants pregame show because we got a game in almost literally in an hour, and I got my guy Omar, who's host of D Covers podcast, a basketball contributor for Off the Ball Network, and as well as the Medium app. I hope I got everything on there that about you, bro, because I don't
Yeah,
want to leave nothing. I
that
don't want to leave
covers
nothing.
it. That pretty much covers it, man. The podcast, the writing, for both myself and off the ball, and yeah, just trying to churn up this content, man. Trying to be like you one day. So that's what I'm doing.
Hey, the funny thing is, I'm trying to be like you. That's why you brought that spark to me back into writing for sure. Because
Mhm.
you always bring out some great content when it comes to that, and we're going to be talking about that in a little bit. But for my introductory question to you is,
Yeah.
when it comes to like Giants grades, who's that Giant grade you would love to add to this current Giants team right now?
So it's a great question, Aaron, because the team has so many holes. So you could go a lot of ways. Obviously, the easiest answer is Lawrence Taylor, right?
Oh,
Like that's the easy one. But um, I think because of how bad this offensive line is, that it has been for the last decade, somebody like Dave Deal or like Sean O'Hara from like the early 2000s, Eli Manning era, I think those would probably be my answer. You could also, if you want to get a little bit more of a dynamic running back, bring back Tiki Barber. But I think one of those two offensive linemen is the way. It's kind of crazy. Like you start looking back into recent Giants history, the offensive line has been like a plaguing issue for this franchise now for about 2 decades. It's just kind of crazy. It's like that's one thing they always said, that Eli Manning could never be kept upright, because the poor line play, and then that was the same situation with Daniel Jones, So yeah, give me one of these giant, great offensive tackles or guards, and then maybe we could actually win some games here. But because I feel like the team's somewhat talented, it's just like the line play on the offensive has just been a thorn in their side for so many years now. I've lost count.
Yeah, it's like the quarterbacks are fighting for their lives every time they're out there, and the good thing about Daniel Jones, he can move with his legs and everything,
Yeah.
but it's just like you want to have a good offensive line. The funny thing is that you bring that up because last week was Samuel Njoku was on there, and I asked him who was a Ravens grade he won on there. He said Marshall Yonder, so it's kind of funny that both of y'all said offensive line because a lot of people would probably say running back or wide receiver.
You know what that means to me is just I truly believe this, Aaron. I think that the offensive line play in the NFL as a whole has gotten really bad, and I don't know if it's like a not enough reps in practice thing or whatever the case may be, but I really feel like the type of offensive line play we used to see in the late 90s, early 2000s, and even the 2010s, those type of dominant, just crushing offensive linemen is kind of gone away. I feel like you ask most teams, they're going to say, yeah, our offensive line could be better. And which is just kind of interesting. I think there's been a shift in the archetype of the build, especially of the tackles, right? They're a little bit leaner now, to be a little bit more agile to compete with these edge rushers who have also become so much more athletic that maybe, it was really damaged the overall quality of the lines. And now injuries happen all the time. So, you got a lot of guys like the Giants have dealt with this over the past few years, guys switching from tackle to guard and back and forth, and it's just kind of like, it just tells me a lot about where the league is right now in terms of offensive line play. And when people say that quarterback play is bad, I think that's directly tied to the fact that it's actually offensive line play that's pretty bad, right? Which is not great if you're like a guy who likes watching the trenches. It's a little unfortunate, but yeah. I think most fans you have on to ask that question, unless they had like a super great quarterback or something, would probably pick an offensive lineman if they had some sense.
Yeah, because offensive linemen are like the untold heroes when it comes to your team. Like all your Super Bowl teams back in the day, they always had this really good offensive line.
Yeah.
Like you may know a couple guys, but when you go back into it, like, oh, he's a Hall of Famer. I just didn't know who he was and everything. Oh, and we got my guy Justin said, prime OBJ,
That's a good one. Mm-hmm.
but definitely need help at offensive line. I definitely agree on that. But when it comes to offensive line, I don't think it. I think it's a lot of deal with players moving around in positions. Like you see guys in college, they're left tackles, but when they get to the league, now they're a guard and everything. It's like you don't get the pure offensive lineman that was been a left tackle since he's been a freshman in college or nothing like that. Because like you brought up, a lot of players have been hurt.
That kind of brings up another thing. I think I wrote about this a while ago where there's this thing about positional versatility now. Like you see it a lot with like receivers and tight ends, where like a tight end has to run the routes that a number 1 or number 2 receiver would have. Receivers now play on the outside and in the slot. Running backs play multiple positions, and on defense, corners and safeties kind of alternate, different positions. Safeties play the linebacker role sometimes, and when you have, it's almost like a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. Yeah. And I just feel like for receivers is awesome. For running backs is awesome. Offensive line, not so much. I think if you're a tackle, be a tackle. If you're a guard, be a guard. Injury, that's a different thing, obviously, which that's something that the Giants have dealt with. But I think that, the moving around, the shuffling pieces ultimately damages the offensive line. And especially because a lot of the great offensive lines, you associate them as a unit. You think about the Cowboys in the 90s or Washington in the 80s. They were defined by these 5 guys that just anchored that whole offensive line. And I feel like you don't see it too much anymore. Like your best offensive tackle for many years now has been Trent Williams. We don't really talk too much about the rest of the Niners O-line as much. And I think that's maybe an indication of just how not skilled it has become at that position.
Yeah, it used to be easy where you could think about offensive lineman on the like real quick, but now you're like, he's been in the league. He was really good at one time, but when you look at film, you're like, okay, this guy didn't drop the way his production as an offensive lineman because a lot of you, like you brought up, a lot of these guys are hurt and a lot of these guys are moving around. It's like asking somebody that's left-handed to write with their right hand when it comes moving around.
Yeah,
that's my best analogy when it comes to that because it's a transition and everything when it comes to offense line. You kind of just want them just to be playing that position. Yeah. So, but my next question goes going back into the articles. Your latest articles you were talking about is the average fan being priced out in the NFL, and I want to get your. I'm looking at it, and you brought up some great points, like how much literally live TV. You got NFL Sunday Ticket and all these other networks, these other streaming services. It costs a pretty penny and everything when you add it all up. And my biggest thing is, what about the older fan that doesn't have all these streaming services and everything?
Yeah, so I think the NFL has done a really good job of positioning the stars of its league, right? Like you want to watch back in the day, you would want to watch the Patriots because of Tom Brady. You'd want to watch the Colts because of Peyton Manning, even if you're outside of Boston or Indianapolis. And because it kind of established these stars, it made something like Sunday Ticket appealing, right? But when it becomes so cost prohibitive to watch out of market games, and the national game maybe like remember like when I was younger in the early window you used to have a AFC game on CBS and an NFC game on Fox, right? That's not the case anymore. CBS usually doesn't do early games. A lot of times they compete with Fox for the late window. They'll typically have it's usually AFC NFC dynamic, but in the early window they don't have it. So a lot of times these people will be like, well, I got Fox and I got my local channel here, so I'm just going to go ahead and stick with my local team. So if I'm here where I'm at in Washington State, I'll just watch the Seahawks and that's it, right? And you don't really get exposed to all these other guys. You don't watch, the Chiefs or you don't watch the Cowboys or whoever else, maybe the Steelers, and it makes it where a lot of these fans will probably just end up rooting for their team, but it's missed opportunities for others because think about whenever there's a Peacock game, whenever there's a Plus game, inevitably they're online. Everybody's like, this is BS. I'm not trying to pay for Peacock just to watch this game. I'm not trying to pay for this. And it becomes death by a thousand cuts. And so for the fan, it sucks because like I think about myself, right? Like I decided not to do Sunday ticket this year, and because I'm just like it's like $400. I already pay 73 for YouTube TV, and then you add in all the other ones if you want to watch all the games, So you gotta have Prime, you got Paramount, you got Peacock, you gotta have this and this and this, and it's just like, like do I really need all of that, right? Is what it becomes, what it kind of boils down to. And for the NFL, it's awesome because
Oh yeah.
they just look at it like we have this pie. If we cut it in 8 different slices, we could charge more for the pie, and so and then you think about the fact that ESPN offered the single team package in a proposal, and the NFL was said no, and it just feels very greedy,
Oh,
right? And when you're the NFL, you're obviously the top dog. You're the number one league in the country, one of the most profitable sports leagues in the world. But like, if you're an average fan, you're just trying to watch your team. It becomes a lot more challenging. And I just feel like there's gonna come a moment in time where people are gonna say, you know what, screw this. I don't want to see the Netflix game if I don't want to subscribe to Netflix, whatever, that kind of thing. And I just wonder if they're maybe playing a little bit of a dangerous game here, just assuming everybody's just going to want football forever. There's weird little cracks in the foundation of football right now. I think it was Kirby Smart, the head coach at Georgia for football, was kind of saying how there's less and less interested high school players wanting to play the game. And so if the talent pool continues to reduce, the quality of the product continues to reduce, but you're still going to charge top pricing. And I think that maybe in like 10 to 20 years, we might be looking back and say, yeah, that was kind of the start of it. NFL got a little too greedy, didn't really invest in the youth movement, and then that's what happens. It's kind of reminds me of what happened to baseball. Like baseball was the sport for the longest time. It kind of, just said, yeah, we're the best, whatever. We're just going to keep on doing our thing. And they didn't innovate with the times. So I think that in the short term, it's awesome for the NFL. They're going to make a lot of money, and they have made a lot of money. But, for a lot of fans, there's frustration. And some people might just say, hey, that's capitalism. And that's fair. But, I do wonder if there has to be an adjustment to this, later on.
yeah, but when you looking at like all these streaming services, let's say you get like a good chunk of them, you're like at the end of the football season, maybe you don't watch Peacock TV and you're looking at like, when did I get this? Oh, I wanted to watch my Chiefs play in this one game out of the whole year because I wanted to make sure I watched the game because I think that's one of the things. There's so many services and everything, and what if your team? What if you're a Seahawk fan, but you live in Florida and stuff, but you just want to watch their game. But I got to figure out which streaming service I need to get and everything because they always alter to a switch one because then you're like, man, I didn't spend this much money on watching the game, but it's only one game out of the whole year on the service.
And that's where the ESPN package would have made a lot of sense. You pay $70 to $100, you got your team's out of market games, and you're done. Now you have to have Sunday ticket to do that. It's $400, right? It's 4 times as much. Yeah, you can watch all the other games, but to your example, if you're just a fan of one team, you don't want to watch the other game. You don't care. Most people aren't like me and you, where they're going to want to watch all these games. And it's something that I think the NFL is going to need to address eventually, but they probably won't address it until the numbers start to dip, and at that point, the damage starts becoming done. So, and of course, the league is still going to be profitable for a long time. I'm not trying to say like the NFL is doomed or something like that, but there is a level of greed going on right now, and you just wonder, how sustainable that is, in the decades to come.
Yeah, it's between greed and arrogance. Like, oh, we're at the top. Like baseball back in the days was at top at times, but now baseball is kind of that third wheel type of sport. You're seeing the growth in the WNBA, and then you got the NBA. But when it comes to baseball, not a lot of people watching it. There's a lot of games and everything, and so people's focus and fandom for baseball is not there like it was in the 80s and 90s and 70s.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that the hierarchy right now goes NFL, college football,
Mhm.
then NBA. Maybe then you get into college basketball and baseball kind of being at that tier there. And I honestly, I've been saying this for a while. I think with these contracts with the international soccer leagues and stuff, Premier League is creeping up on baseball as well.
It is.
And so it's just kind of like, yeah. I mean, obviously we're not talking about baseball, but baseball has a lot of problems. It still has a fan base, but its fan base is getting older. And like I remember, I did an interview on my pod with somebody about baseball and why it's not resonating with people in their 20s. And I posted like a clip on TikTok, and a bunch of people in that demographic had commented, and they were like, "It's too boring. It takes too long," And it's just like, one person is moving, and everybody else is just standing still, waiting for something to happen. And I think that's a legitimate thing where the sensibilities of a younger generation doesn't really jive with your sport. Bring it back to football. Is there maybe a point where a younger generation comes around and thinks about the CTE element and says, "Hey, I don't really want to support a sport that does this and that, ignored head trauma for so long, right?" It's an interesting thing to think about, especially with us who love the game of football. But there is kind of like a underbelly there that maybe a lot of people don't talk about that often.
Yeah, because we're gonna end up being the older audience, like the ones in baseball, sadly. But but that's the truth. Is we're in a society where everybody wants their content or things real quick, and not
Yeah,
they don't want to prolong it because they're like, okay, let me watch what else is on. This game is too long and stuff. But when it comes to like basketball and football, there's still action and stuff, but like you brought up, there's head trauma and stuff you got to worry about. Yes, they're trying to got guarding cats, but you only got one guy wearing in the whole NFL right now because they're like, I'm not gonna put something on there, some padding I don't think is gonna protect my head.
You know what that reminds me of is when hockey introduced helmets, and
Uh,
everybody for those years there was quotes everywhere saying like, "Oh, I'm not going to do this. I'm a real man." Blah 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 blah. Like it's not about that. I think honestly, if a great opportunity would be for somebody like Tua if he comes back. Now I wrote a piece recently saying I think he should retire, and I stand by that. But if he decides that he wants to come back, I think he should do it with a Guardian helmet because, yeah, it's one thing for a defender on the Cleveland Browns to have a Guardian helmet on. It's another thing if a franchise quarterback has one on. And I think that would send a message of maybe it would get more people to do it. Like if Patrick Mahomes decided to start wearing one, I think everybody would start wearing them. To be honest, and there's like the whole like, oh, it doesn't look cool. And I was like, what's not cool? Having CTE and having constant headaches when you're 50. Like that's what's not cool. So yeah, I would like to see more people do it. Like people are like, oh, this looks stupid. I'm like, I don't care. Like if the guys are safe, that's all that matters. You got QBs wearing like flak jackets and stuff to protect their ribs and stuff, right? So like that doesn't look cool, but they still wear them, because you got to protect their ribs. They got to treat the head the same way, I think.
Yeah, I think there needs to be that poster child like a Patrick Mahomes or Tua definitely. If he gets out there, you got to put him in a helmet.
If I was Mike McDaniel, I would make him do it. Like,
yeah,
honestly, just listen, because you could really think about like Mike McDaniel looks like he actually cares. Like you see the way he was on the sideline. Like he's not like a lot of these old coaches, like shut up and play type coaches or whatever. But it seems like there's a human relation there. And I think he said, "Look, man, I care about you. This is supposed to help. Let's try it. See how it works for you, and then go from there." But yeah, I think he should definitely consider it. But yeah, so it's something that I think the league should be a little bit more aggressive on. Like, yeah, they say, yeah, it's totally optional. I think they need to incorporate a design maybe where it works, but where it doesn't have to have the little sleeve over the top, but. If they could kind of somehow have a more of a strict mandate for it, it would like if you have a head injury, you have to wear it the rest of the season, kind of thing. Like that sort of a mandate.
Yeah, that should be a mandate. Like, okay, you had a concussion, you're gonna have to wear that if you want to play it.
Yeah,
It shouldn't. That shouldn't even be an option. And when it comes to that, it's not a fashion contest. You're playing football. You want to protect your brain because at the end of the day, football is only a short part of your life. Like you want to
Exactly.
make sure you remember people and everything. You don't have a brain of a 90-year-old and you're only 40 years old. Like you want to
Yeah,
protect
like
that.
if you're an NFL player and you know what happened to Junior Seau, for example,
Hmm.
right? And how does that not tell you, like, how does that not become a wake up call, right? It's just, and if they tell you, hey, this is actually going to help with it, unless they're skeptical, now that's
Yeah,
another thing. They might be skeptical. Who knows? But obviously, we don't know for sure if they work. But if there's even a small chance of it reducing the likelihood of a concussion, I think they should definitely wear it.
yeah, without a doubt. Go, Now going to the broadcaster side. So the quarterback Tom, the GOAT quarterback Tom Brady is in the broadcast booth now.
Mhm.
I want to get your thoughts on how he has been as a commentator in these few games.
Um, he's obviously showing his inexperience, right?
Yeah,
And he's not good right now. He's not good, but he's only done 3 broadcasts, so you have to give him some time. I think the issue is the amount of money they paid him. They obviously are going to give him the headline game, the A game, right? They're not going to put him on Carolina versus Falcons, right? They're not going to do that. I do think that Greg Olson is a tremendous talent, and it's a little bit annoying that he got booted for that. I think that Brady probably could have benefited from being on a lower profile game for his first year, and then maybe if he showed the growth, get elevated to the major primary guy, because now it's become, oh, we paid this guy 250 million
yeah,
to do this, and poor Greg Olson, and it's just like it's almost like they're cutting commercials about him being a bad broadcaster. And I'm just kind of like, you gotta, after a point too, if he doesn't improve, you have to make a decision. Is he just better in the studio, maybe? Kind of like Michael Strahan obviously is in the studio. Terry Bradshaw's been in the studio for a long time. Maybe that's the case. And I think everybody just assumed he'd be awesome because how smart he is, right? He's a smart QB. He's always had the football IQ is through the roof. That,
mhm,
but it's hard. People don't think about how hard it is to do that, right? Like you see, like Troy Aikman, who's gotten really good at it, but when Troy first started, he wasn't that good. So it takes time. You're learning a new craft, and the good thing about guys like Brady is that they're hardwired from their football days to just like take coaching, get better, study, and really just pour themselves into the venture. And I think that he eventually will probably get better, but we probably have a. I mean, it probably sucks for you more than anybody, Aaron, because it seems like they like to throw him on Cowboys games a lot, but because that's usually the primary
yeah, it
Bucks
is.
game, right? Is because Dallas has such a high interest nationally, so it's yeah, so I was like, I caught a couple of them. I was like, man, the Tom, he's just not that good, man. He just, he's not as sharp as you would like him to be, but I'm sure he'll get there eventually.
Yeah, and when it came to Greg Olson, he was getting experience when he got hurt in the last two couple years in the
Mm-hmm.
Carolina. They would have him on in the analyze the game like after the pre or post game or something like that. So he
Yeah.
got that experience. So when he transitioned to becoming an analyst, it was a lot smoother than Tom Brady. Tom Brady went from playing football, took a year off doing ventures in TB12 and everything, but they're like, oh, we're giving you $250 million. You're gonna get the big time game because we're paying you all this money. So
Right.
that's like you said, he wasn't getting the small market games. Like, no, you're Tom Brady. We're paying you this much
Mhm.
money. You're
Yeah,
getting
exactly.
Dallas.
You're getting the big game, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
you're getting the marquee game. I think what annoyed me more, or has annoyed me more about the whole Brady broadcasting thing, is that he still dangles the coming back and playing thing
Yeah.
around. Like, decide if you're retired or not, dude. Like, I hated it when Brett Favre did this stuff, and it's just like you've been around for a long time. You played for 20 plus years. Like, it's time to go. And then there's like the ownership thing with the Raiders, where you can't like criticize officials. That's kind of like a weird complexity. Like, I can't imagine. Like, I was wondering, like during the Olympics, Dwayne Wade was calling U.S. Olympics basketball games,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh man, this guy's really good with no ego. He should be on a broadcast. But then I thought about it, I was like, oh man, he's a minority owner in the Jazz, so like Is that like a conflict of interest? And now you're seeing what happens when you have an ownership stake and you go to do commentary. There's certain rules.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're a part of the NFL now, so you can't criticize officials like that. You're not just a media partner. So I don't know. I kind of wonder, like, how long is he going to stay doing this? Especially if, like, some TV stuff takes off and he keeps on getting criticized, and maybe he's like, you know what, I'm part owner of the Raiders. I don't need this, and then just step down, or if he is just so addicted to the grind that he just figures it out someday.
Yeah, I think he's gonna go with the second option. He's used to criticism, so he's just like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna show y'all.
Yeah,
It, maybe he'll become a great broadcaster, or maybe he'll just be in the middle, but he's still gonna get paid well because of
yeah.
based on the namesake. So they're kind of putting like Greg Olsen. He was a really good tight end, but you could have one of the claimed number one, the best quarterback of all time as your commentator. We're gonna give him the shine.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, it's usually the all-time greats that aren't so good at the
Mm-hmm.
broadcasting thing. Like where they're great players, not so great at analyzing. But maybe Brady, if anyone is the exception, you would imagine it would be Brady. But time will tell. Maybe he turns into another Aikman. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
the ideal path for him. If he could become what Troy Aikman has become, then he'll be doing all right.
Yeah, and then we'll come back. Hey, he actually improved from the last time we
Mhm.
talked about it and everything. So,
Exactly.
but getting into the meat and potatoes of the show, what is your key matchup versus the Giants and the Cowboy game? Like, who is the two one-on-ones you're looking
Listen,
at?
I'll be honest with you, Aaron. I'm only watching the Giants this year for one player, and that player is Malik Neighbors. He's the only player I care about because this feels like a gap year for them. Um, Now, there you could make the argument Andrew Thomas with Micah Parsons coming off the edge. That's an interesting matchup. I think that's probably the right answer. My answer is Malik Neighbors versus the Dallas secondary because everything you want in an elite wide receiver, this guy has. He has a speed, he has a size, hands, athleticism. Like, I don't think it's that far fetched to say by the end of next year he's a top 3 receiver in the league. He has that level of skill, and he's so good. He's making Daniel Jones seem average. So which is really hard to do because remember at the beginning of the year, people had Daniel Jones at like 30th, 31st, or 32nd ranked QB for with a lot of those lists that came out, and Neighbors is just a special talent. I'm hoping they don't squander it like they did with Odell Beckham, but uh, he is everything that was advertised and more. So obviously, got a few interesting DBs on the Dallas side. I'm curious to see how they defend him, or do they bracket him, or do they kind of just rotate the coverage? Like, how are they going to do it? I'm kind of curious to see how they play that. And the Giants, like, the Devin Singletary had a nice little game against Cleveland last year. Obviously, a lot of people were mad at him for not scoring on that last play, but yeah, he's been a serviceable running back for them. Acquired in free agency after Barkley left, but yeah, it's for me, it's Neighbors versus a Dallas secondary, and probably secondarily, I would say Parsons and Thomas. On the other side of the ball, Dallas. I don't know what's your feeling on this, Aaron, but Dallas's offense has been kind of weird. It just it's been a strange year, and which has been weird because in the Dak Prescott era, the offense has been pretty reliable. And it just feels a little inconsistent now. Like obviously they get smoked by the Saints, and then they follow it up, and it looks like they only barely lost to the Ravens, but that was a very deceiving situation. That was
It
like a
was.
whole lot of garbage time. The Ravens kind of stopped trying, and then whatever. But yeah, it's just I don't know. Like the Giants defense, the defensive line has been playing a little bit better after last week in Cleveland. So Thibodeau and Ojolari and Dexter Lawrence, those are guys that are going to try and clog up the middle there and get some pressure on Prescott. But I'm kind of and Brian Burns, of course. I forget about Brian Burns. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious to see how this Dallas offense looks. I think the Giants defense is average, and so there's potential for CD to have a big game. But yeah, I don't know. They feel a little off this year
It
compared to
is.
years past of Cowboys offenses.
Yeah, it's because like you say, you could usually rely on our offense, but it's just like they're in an identity crisis. Are we going to be a passing team, and then the lack of connection with him and Dak? Like, yeah, he's putting some solid stats up, but not as a wide receiver. He's
Mm.
dropped the ball. He made that careless fumble, and then you seen the argument going back and forth on the sidelines. It's just you're not. It's just not there. I guess because due to the fact that he wasn't at training camp and everything where they could
Mm.
build that the connection as that wide receiver one. But but when it comes to the offense, there's not like a guy that really stepped up as that wide receiver too. You do get to see spurts from Brandon Cooks, Jake Ferguson. He did miss one game, but we lack a running game. We're one of the worst running games in the league right now. It just I seen a stat where literally Rico Dowdle, Ezekiel Elliott, and Deuce Vaughn have not broke a tackle when they run. It's basically they run a couple yards and they go forward. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no breakout runs when it comes to these guys.
Well, now too, with the way the defenses have adjusted to offenses in the league, where they're like kind of sitting in this too high safety look, basically saying, "Hey, you're going to have to run the ball or be accurate in the short to medium game, and if you're going to throw the ball to have success." So if you're not having a capability of running the ball, you're kind of DOA because now it's people are going to double down on that. They're going to keep the safeties up high because they don't care about your running game, and it's it's a troubling position to be in for any offense, but yeah, they got to get that run game going. Obviously we all know what Zeke is at this point in his career, and you're kind of hoping that the young guys figure it out. I actually like Deuce Vaughn coming out of college. I think he's at Kansas State, and I always thought that he had some potential, but it's he can't break tackles at the second level. That's always going to
That's
be a problem. You're
yeah.
not going to last too long in this league if that's the case. And I mean, do you find yourself regretting that they didn't retain Pollard, or are you kind of like, well, you got to find the next guy?
At first, when they got rid of him, I was like, okay, they're gonna find the guy in the draft, and we didn't go that route. So because there was a lot of great running backs out
Mm.
there that we could have possibly got, and the aggressiveness in free agency was zero until like the last second, and we could have got some solid, decent running back, and had Zeke and Dow be like complementary backs or so. But now you're forcing these guys. Okay, you can be running back one, you can be running back 1B. But those are not those type of guys. Zeke is not the same guy he was in 2019 or 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a Dalvin Cook in the waiting, but I think the production is similar to what you got with Zeke. They're both the same age. They're not the same guys they once were. So
Mm-hmm.
I think they should establish trying to get a running game because later on in the season, a lot of these quarterbacks' arms are gonna be shot, and they need that burst when it comes to the running back. And as of now, we don't have that running back in Dallas at all. And I think we should have kept Tony Pollard on this team until we figure out who's going to be that next running back up. We could at least sign him to a 1 or 2 year deal and seeing what Pollard could give for us because it would be a lot better than what we got right now.
Yeah, I think there's this big assumption that they're like, hey, the running back position's dead. You could just draft a guy in the 5th round, 6th round, 7th round, or an undrafted free agent, and you'll be fine. And you're starting to, I feel like so far this year, we've seen the reemergence of the lead back. Like Saquon has been doing really well for Philly. Joe Mixon for the Texans has been doing pretty well. Obviously, he didn't play last week, but these different backs are kind of, Bijan Robinson is playing well. The Lions' whole thing is running the ball with Montgomery and Gibbs, and you're starting to wonder, like, well, is it maybe having a little bit of a revitalization of the position, especially again as defenses have kind of played these safe covers. You need somebody who could make things happen. After the line of scrimmage, and if you don't have it, you're kind of in rough shape, and that feels to me what Dallas is at right now. And like at least with the Giants, right? Like they decide, okay, we're going to let Saquon walk. We're not going to pay him this money because of where we are as a franchise. But you get a guy in Devin Singletary who's not a terrible replacement. He's not Saquon. And
Yeah.
it's weird to see him wear number 26. I'm not going to lie to you. But, he's a good running back who could catch the ball out of the backfield. And more than serviceable in this league. So and Dallas didn't really go after anybody like that, which is highly unusual for them.
It
It's
is.
usually they're going to try and get somebody, right? Which is just kind of odd, I think.
Yeah, like y'all got Singletary. He's a very serviceable running back. That's all you really want is a serviceable running back. If you're not gonna go with the big high name like a Derrick
Yeah.
Henry or Saquon Barkley, get like a solid guy like a Zach Moss or Devin Singletary. You should do well when it comes to the running game. And I wish we went that way. Maybe knowing them, they'll probably be into the trade deadline. If the running game doesn't go too well, they'll probably find a guy. But you kind of be like, you could have did this earlier, and then we would have been fine. But
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there. But lastly, before I let you go, what is like your 3 keys to victory in this game?
Oh, I mean, I have very little faith in the Giants to win this game. I'll be honest. I think that Dallas is desperate, right? Because they're 1-2. They're not supposed to be 1-2. And the Giants probably should be 1-2, probably expected to be 1-2, if we're being honest with ourselves. But if you're the Giants, obviously you gotta feed Neighbors the ball. That's going to be the first thing. I'd like to see them establish a running game with Singletary, and on the defensive side, you got to get a pass rush. To your point, the Dallas run game has been pretty weak, so I think their focus, and it's going to be tough against Dexter Lawrence too. He's just sees a whole lot of body in the middle there, right? But if you could get like Ojulari, Thibodeau, and Burns kind of cooking off the edge and pressuring Dak a little bit, that's probably going to be your key to a win tonight. It's kind of crazy because I think the Cowboys have beat the Giants 13 of the last 16 meetings, so they've really dominated this series in recent memory, and I'm fully expecting the Cowboys to win tonight, but because like for the Giants, you look at the first game, you don't even show up against Minnesota, look terrible. But Minnesota's 3-0, credit to them, right? But in the second game, you play Washington, you set history by losing a game that you didn't allow a touchdown to in regulation, which is crazy. They lost with 3 field goals, and then they had their own kicking issues that game. It was disgusting. And then you're playing the Browns last week, and I felt like that was a game of not who wanted to win, but who wanted to lose less. And it felt like the Browns just wanted to lose that game a little bit more. And this game, I feel like, again, a desperate Dallas team that's going to come out with like a really heavily scripted first 15 plays to try to execute the offense at a high level. But yeah, I think if you get Neighbors on a couple of these chunk plays, you establish the run a bit with Singletary and even Daniel Jones on like these design bootlegs that they've been running, and you get a little bit of that pass rush on Dak, you got a chance to steal one. And I think the weather's supposed to be pretty shitty today, so I think that could be another factor for maybe a little bit of a closer game as opposed to if the weather was a little bit more ideal.
Yeah, I do got that advantage with the outdoor field because we are in this nice, cozy stadium. Not definitely not bragging on it because when you get into those later games, we got Pittsburgh next week, so we're gonna be playing a couple of old school teams out there. So it's a rough path. And
let me ask you real quick, Aaron, with Pittsburgh, are you buying them at all? They're 3-0, obviously. I mean, do you think they're for real or not really?
I think they're just gonna be a solid Pittsburgh Steelers. It'll
9 wins.
Yeah, just 9 wins. Mike Tomlin is gonna have he's gonna cook it up where he can get 9 or 10 wins this year.
Yeah.
Does him as a Super Bowl team? No, I don't think Justin Fields has been solid so far, but I think smart teams are gonna figure out the Steelers team and they're gonna be like they were last year, just solid.
I can't watch that, man. Like I'm sorry, like hate me for liking offense, I guess, but it's just kind of like there's one thing, but to have like 2 defenses playing at a high level, it's another thing when you got an offense that that isn't really doing anything, and they're kind of like, we're just gonna give it to Najee, we're gonna hope that Justin makes a couple throws here and there, but overall the execution always feels a little off. I just, I'm not really buying them. Of all the undefeated teams, I buy them the least. But to your point, I think you're looking at 9-8, maybe 10-7 here. They'll probably be in the playoffs, but I can't imagine them going that far. So I'm a firm seller on the Steelers right now. But that should be an interesting game for you guys next week.
Yeah, especially playing against their tough defense. But my quick keys to victory for this game is we got to stop the run because I know the Giants are going to try to establish a run game. The film proved that we allowed a lot of yards because last week we let Derrick Henry get 150 yards. Before that, Alvin
Mm.
Kamara, and that's not even including Lamar Jackson who had over 87 yards against us. So I see them trying to run with the Malik Neighbors and also Daniel Jones using his feet when there's an opening where he can run the ball. So you got to contain that. I'm not going to say stop because there's proof that we haven't been the team to stop the run. But if we
Yeah.
can minimalize the run game, I think that's one of the key things. And this game, I hope this is the game where CD Lamb and Dak get back on page where they could be that 1-2 punch again. And then my last thing is it's a wild card one of this, but I'm seeing some good things from a guy of who's our fullback H back type of guy, Hunter Lupke, who made some solid catches last week for I got it written down right here. 46 yards. He brings that spark to this team. I think could we possibly put him in a role like I don't know if you did get to watch the Chiefs and Falcons game where you seen their fullback Carson still be their lead running back for the game. Could we put him in there just to establish some type of running game, or as well as he can be like a H back and catch and make some moves, add a new wrinkle to this offense that we haven't seen in these 3 games. But I think it's stopping the run and establishing a solid offensive game because it's been lackluster on both sides of the field.
You guys are probably breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief, though. You go from, having to try and stop Kamara and Henry and Lamar. Now all you got to worry about is Daniel Jones and Devin Singletary. So, that's it's not necessarily, MVP candidates, in the quarterback or running back position there. So, you guys get a little bit of a break there. So that's solid. And good on you, man, shouting out a fullback.
Yeah.
Not too many of them left. True, because I feel like a lot of teams they just kind of take their third tight end and try to turn them into a fullback when needed, just because everything is run out of single back and pistol and gun or nowadays, so you don't see too much I formation unless you're at the goal line. But yeah, I wonder if that's you maybe mix it up because you get like this real bruising, kind of break a couple tackles type of thing, and maybe get the running game going that way. And there's nothing wrong with a little old fashioned up the middle power run, and maybe that's what they need.
Yeah, they need to bring some type of physicality to this team. It's too finesse. Like, bring back some of Mike Allstott's similar type of role to, like, bring some nostalgia for the fullback fans. Because I was a big fan of fullbacks back in the day. Him, Lorenzo Neal.
I was just gonna say Lorenzo Neal. Yeah, that was a good one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that almost kind of brings a little tear to my eye because thinking about the fullbacks back in the day, they don't use them no more. But
yeah, it's unfortunate, honestly. I'd like to see some like offense zag and just kind of like run a couple of these full house formations, that we used to see back in the day, and see if how defenses react to it. Because now defenses are a lot smaller, a lot more speed, and because the base coverage. I think I was looking this up. I was doing research for a piece, and where you look at how often defenses line up in the nickel versus what they used to in like the 90s. So in the 90s, it was just kind of like 70-80% of the time base defense 4-3 or 3-4, depending on what you ran. And then now, like 60% of the time, they're in the nickel or nickel or dime. And I'm just like, yeah, that just goes to show you how times have changed. You got to have the third DB on there to kind of cover the slot guy because most of these offensive base sets are 3 wide or 2 wide and 2 tight end, and the tight ends are basically receivers now. So, it's just kind of like an interesting thing.
Yeah, and when you think of linebackers, they're not these big 6'4", 250
totally different
thumpers. Yeah. You got guys like Fred Warner, who's about 6'3", about 220, 230, that can drop in the coverage like he's a safety or a corner and stuff. You got lighter guys, like you said. You don't got those big thumping guys anymore because they're most likely going to be on special teams. That's all they can bring to the table.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at like some of these on the offensive side of the ball, some of these backs and receivers, how fast they are. Yeah. Good luck. You're like a middle linebacker trying to pick up, like a crossing route from a slot guy. Have fun with that, man. You got to get these guys who could at least hold the coverage for a few seconds while the pass rush gets home. It's just kind of like that's just the evolution of the game, right? It used to be your main speed threats were on the outside, your X and your Y, but now it's like your slot guy is just as much of a threat to the point where your number one might line up in the slot, try to open up mismatches and stuff. Just a totally different game than it was back when we were younger, man. So
yeah, the main word is you got to bring versatility because that
Mhm.
if you don't have any versatility, you're gonna be a one trick pony in this league, that's not a guy that makes the big money or is the well known guy on the team.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. But I appreciate you for being on the show. Definitely got into some great discussion. Definitely
Yeah.
have to have you back again to talk some football because you got an excellent knowledge for the game. And we love having you on, Omar.
Hey, man, Aaron, I appreciate it. Last week I thought of you guys. I had these chorizo tacos, and they were fucking amazing. So, but no, yeah, super happy to be on to talk with you guys. Always a great conversation. I guess I could plug myself while I'm talking here.
Yeah,
So,
please.
follow me on X/Twitter at Omar Zhrn. Also on Instagram. It's just take out the A and put a period after the R. And because it's always tough finding usernames apparently. But
It
you
is.
can catch all my written work on deepcoversports.com, which is through Medium. You also catch on Off the Ball Network, and you can catch my podcast, Deep Cover Podcast, that is on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and that has new episodes weekly every Thursday. So, Aaron, man, I appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to tonight's game. Hopefully, it's a good one.
Yes, sir. I can't wait. It definitely wanted to be a great game. Uh, I want this Thursday night game to be like you put as a game of week this week. I know that's probably a bold subject to some people, but that's what I'm hoping for tonight.
Well, yeah, Thursday night games the past few years have been kind of trash, if we're being honest.
Yeah,
So having a nice close one, a classic NFC East matchup, maybe we'll see.
yeah. Fingers crossed. But yeah, this has been tacos and touchdowns. Y'all have a good one. And Thursday night football's here. Y'all have a good one. Peace.